What makes a story feel African without forcing it comes down to authenticity, not decoration, not splashing prop. It's not about adding obvious cultural markers on top. It's about letting the world of the story naturally reflect the people, their values, the region that this story comes from or draws from. Yes, there are filmmakers who use Africa as props for their films. People can see through it. One of the clearest signs is in the details of everyday life. How people speak, how they relate to each other, how they respect is shown, how conflict is handled, the way mother calls her child, how elders are addressed, how joy and humor shows up in serious moments. These are small things that vary significantly across African cultures and upbringings, yes, but yet they carry a strong sense of place and identity without needing to explain. No, you don't need to explain Africa. Yes, you do not need to explain your culture. Another layer is the value system underneath the story. Many African stories are shaped by community, sensory, spirituality, and collective identity rather than just individual goals, right? That doesn't mean every story has to focus on those things. No. But when they are naturally present in how the character thinks and acts, the story starts to feel grounded in its real, authentic context. And yes, when there are individual goals within this context too, you have to show it. So the environment also plays a role, but not in the stereotypical way. It's not just about showing markets or vibrancy or colors or villages or the flip side, urban spaces, or going the extra mile to impress ignorant people by showing shopping malls, skyscrapers, or imported luxury items. No, it's about how people interact with their surroundings. So the pace of life, the sound, the texture, the mix of tradition and modernity, the middle of an urban city like Lagos, for example, carries a completely different energy than a rural setting around Lagos. And that energy shapes behavior and storytelling. So I'm talking about language and expression. This matters too. Even when the story is in English and, the rhythm, the phrasing, and the subtle use of indigenous expressions, slangs, they carry cultural identity. So it's not about overloading the dialogue with slangs, but about capturing how people naturally communicate. Even just that hissing in between. Even when it's magic realism or sci-fi, you can incorporate this authenticity into it. A good check is to ask whether the story could be lifted out of its setting and still feel the same. So if it could exist anywhere without changing much, it may not be rooted deeply enough. So if the characters, the choices, and the dynamics are clear, clearly shaped by their cultural context, then the story will feel African without you announcing it, without the need to over-announce it. So at its core, it's not about proving that a story is African, it's about just telling it truthfully from within that world. So when the culture is lived rather than added, it becomes something the audience feels rather than something you have to start pointing out or over-exaggerating or explaining. That's my take, but I want to know what you think about what really makes a story or film feel authentically African.